Welcome to FearBound Stories. Please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now let's begin. Claire never liked dolls. Her earliest memory of them was in her grandmother's house, where an entire glass cabinet was filled with porcelain faces staring out. She hated walking past it, especially at night when the moonlight caught their glassy eyes. "They keep secrets," her grandmother used to say. "That's why you should never throw one away." At the time, Claire thought it was just an old woman's superstition, but even as an adult, dolls unsettled her. They looked too human, and yet not human enough. So when her late aunt's estate passed down an antique porcelain doll, Claire felt a pang of dread. It was old, fragile-looking, dressed in lace and satin yellowed with age. Its hair was curled and glossy, its lips painted a perfect rose-red smile. Its face was flawless, maybe too flawless. "Your aunt adored that doll," her mother said as she handed it over. "She kept it close for years. It's valuable, Claire. You should hold on to it." Claire didn't want to argue. She placed it on a shelf in her apartment across the room from her bed and tried to ignore it. But ignoring it wasn't possible. The first nights she just felt watched. It was the way its blue glass eyes seemed to catch light even in the dark. The way its painted smile seemed sharper under the moon. She began waking at odd hours, always at 3 a.m., to the sense that something had changed. Sometimes she swore the doll's head was tilted differently. Other times she thought its eyes were fixed directly on her, though she'd left it facing straight ahead. She blamed fatigue, stress from work, anything but the doll. But then the dreams began. At first they were hazy. She'd see her living room in perfect detail, except the doll wasn't on the shelf. It was closer, on the coffee table, on the floor. Once she dreamed it was perched on her pillow, inches from her face, smiling with both its painted mouth and something underneath. When she woke, her heart thundered, but the doll was always back in its place. She told herself it was sleep paralysis, nothing more, until she noticed the lines. One morning while dusting, Claire picked up the doll and tilted it toward the light. Beneath the porcelain glaze, she thought she saw faint ridges, not cracks but lines, like the edges of another mouth painted over. Her stomach twisted. She told herself she was imagining it, but once she noticed, she couldn't stop. Every time she glanced at the doll, she swore its expression was layered, one sweet painted smile on the surface, and beneath it, something wider, something grinning. The disturbances escalated. First came the tapping. Soft, rhythmic clicks at night, as if fingernails were scratching the wood of the shelf. Then came the whispers. She would wake to faint murmurs in her apartment, impossible to locate, until she realized they always came from the corner where the doll sat. One night she swore she heard her name, breathed out softly from two voices at once. Her skin crawled. Claire tried to dismiss it all until the photographs. She was taking pictures of her apartment to post online, hoping to rent out a spare room. When she uploaded them to her laptop, she froze. In one photo, the doll's eyes were black hollows. In another, its mouth was stretched unnaturally wide, filled with rows of tiny white teeth. And in one, clearest of all, two faces overlapped. The painted porcelain one, and beneath it, another, distorted, grinning ear to ear. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the laptop. She deleted the photos immediately. But when she closed her eyes, she could still see them. After that, she couldn't sleep. Every night she watched the shelf until exhaustion dragged her under. Every morning she woke to something wrong. The doll had shifted slightly, its head angled, its dress smoothed. Once, she found it on the coffee table. Another time, by the window. She lived alone. The breaking point came when she tried to lock it away. She stuffed the doll in a box, sealed it with tape, and shoved it into the back of her closet. Instant relief washed over her. For the first time in weeks, she slept deeply. No dreams, no whispers. But when she woke, the box was on the couch, open. The doll was sitting upright, lace dress pristine, its painted smile sweet as ever. And in the faint reflection of the blank TV screen, Claire saw both faces grinning back at her. She stopped calling her friends, stopped going to work. Curtains drawn, lights on all hours of the night, she sat awake with coffee and trembling hands. Her neighbors later reported hearing screams, then long stretches of silence. No one saw her leave the apartment. When the landlord eventually entered weeks later, the space was immaculate. Furniture dusted, clothes folded, food untouched in the fridge. But Claire was gone. On the couch sat the doll, hands folded neatly in its lap. Its painted face smiled gently at the empty room. And beneath the glaze, faint but visible if you stared long enough, another face grinned wide. Waiting. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Mara had always thought her grandmother's house was strange. As a child, she remembered being shooed away from the attic whenever she got too close. The old woman's voice would turn sharp, eyes stern. "Not up there, Mara. Never up there." She never asked why. And now, years later, her grandmother was gone. The house was hers to clear. Room after room revealed little treasures. Dusty photo albums, cracked teacups, embroidered cloths that smelled faintly of lavender and mothballs. It was melancholy work, but manageable. Until she reached the attic. The stairs groaned as she pulled the cord and climbed up. The air was stale, heavier than anywhere else in the house, thick with dust and something sour, like damp wood left too long. Her flashlight beam cut through cobwebs and illuminated boxes stacked to the ceiling, trunks filled with brittle newspapers and broken furniture. But it was the farthest corner that caught her attention. A small wooden box sat alone, unlike the others. It was wrapped in stiff black cloth, the fabric cracked with age, and bound shut with rusted nails hammered haphazardly into the wood. It looked less like storage and more like a cage. Her pulse quickened. Something in her gut whispered she shouldn't touch it. But curiosity always won. Mara fetched a screwdriver from a nearby toolbox and pried one nail out, then another. The sound was unnervingly loud in the silence, metal squealing against old wood. Finally, with a groan, the lid loosened. Inside lay a doll. It was porcelain, delicate, dressed in lace that had yellowed with time. Its glass eyes gleamed faintly even in the weak beam of the flashlight, and cracks split across its pale cheeks. But what unsettled her most wasn't the doll's face. Its torso was stuffed with dark, coarse fabric, almost like burlap, and folded scraps of paper, handwritten symbols covering them in fading ink. Some were smeared red, as if stained. Pinned across the doll's chest was a note, the ink barely legible. "Do not remove." Mara froze, the words sinking into her chest. Why had her grandmother hidden this away? Was it protection, a curse? She told herself it was just superstition, another relic of her grandmother's old-world beliefs. She wrapped the doll back in the cloth, shoved the box aside, and climbed down from the attic. But that night, the dreams began. She dreamed she was in the attic again, crouched over the open box. The doll was upright now, sitting neatly on top of the cloth. Its cracked lips moved. Not sound, not words, just the movement as if practicing speech. And then faintly she heard it, a whisper. Her name, Mara. She jolted awake, heart hammering, drenched in sweat. The next day the house felt different. Colder. Every room seemed to carry a presence, as though her grandmother wasn't the only thing she had disturbed. She shrugged it off, blaming nerves. But that night she heard it again. A sound from above. Faint, delicate tapping. Porcelain against wood. It came from the attic. She pulled the covers over her head, trembling until dawn. But the next night it grew louder. Dragging now, like small hands scraping across floorboards. And when she finally found the courage to climb the attic stairs with a flashlight, her blood ran cold. The box was open. The doll was sitting on top of it. Its cracked face angled toward her, glass eyes glittering, smile sharper than before. Mara staggered back, slammed the attic door, and locked it. She barely slept that night, but in the morning she told herself it was stress, exhaustion, hallucination. She decided to get rid of it. She wrapped the doll in a towel, stuffed it into a bag, and drove 10 miles to a thrift shop. She left it on the counter, muttered a quick thank you to the cashier, and hurried out without looking back. Relief surged through her chest. Finally, it was gone. That night she slept soundly. Until the morning. When she opened her closet to grab a sweater, the bag was there. Torn open. And sitting neatly inside, the doll stared up at her. Its cracks were gone. Its face was flawless. And its smile was wider. Panic overtook her. Mara carried it into the backyard, laid it on the patio, and smashed it with a hammer. Porcelain shattered under each blow, fragments scattering across the grass. She tore open the torso, yanking out scraps of paper until the ink bled across her hands. She smashed until nothing remained but dust and cloth. Breathless, trembling, she collapsed. It was over. It had to be. But at midnight, she woke to the sound of something rolling across her dresser. Click, click. She turned slowly, and there it was. The doll. Whole again. No cracks. No damage. Its glass eyes gleamed in the dark, and on its lap lay the hammer she had used to destroy it. In the following days, neighbors reported strange things. Mara screaming at night. Shadows moving in her windows. And then silence. Weeks later, her mother entered the house. The rooms were neat, untouched, as though no one had lived there in years. But in the living room on the coffee table sat the doll, its lace dress pristine, its face whole, its eyes gleaming. And beneath it, spread out neatly, were dozens of new slips of paper, each one covered in Mara's handwriting, each one repeating the same phrase. Do not remove. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Lena never believed in haunted objects. She was practical, grounded, the kind of person who rolled her eyes at horror movies. But all of that changed the day Emily found the doll. It had been raining all morning, gray and cold, when Lena pulled into the thrift store to kill time. Emily darted down the toy aisle, her tiny sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. That's when she stopped dead. On the lowest shelf, half hidden behind stuffed animals, sat the doll. Its painted cheeks were rosy, its brown plastic eyes wide. The mouth was open in a frozen laugh, revealing rows of tiny molded teeth. Emily's face lit up. "She's funny!" she cried, hugging it to her chest. Lena grimaced. The doll was chipped, its matted hair tangled in clumps. Something about its fixed grin made her uneasy. But it was only $1, and she didn't have the heart to say no. "All right," she sighed, "but just remember, it doesn't work. It won't laugh." Emily giggled. She doesn't need batteries, she already laughs. That night, Emily tucked the doll into bed beside her. Lena kissed her forehead, switched off the light, and closed the door. Hours later, as Lena washed dishes, she froze. From upstairs came a faint sound, a laugh, high-pitched, mechanical. Her heart thudded. She listened harder. The house fell silent. By morning, she'd convinced herself she imagined it. But Emily bounded into the kitchen with the doll in her arms. "She laughed with me all night," the girl said proudly. "She thinks my jokes are funny." Lena frowned. "Emily, it's just a doll." Emily shook her head. "No, Mommy, she told me. Over the next nights, the laughter became more frequent. Sometimes Lena would hear it faintly through the baby monitor, a sharp chuckle threaded between Emily's giggles. Other times it drifted through the vents after midnight, echoing in the quiet house. Emily only smiled when Lena asked. She likes to play. She says I'm her best friend now. By the fourth night, Lena's nerves were shot. She waited until Emily was at school, then snatched the doll from her bed. She pried at the seams, searching for a mechanism, but found nothing. No speaker, no batteries. Just hollow plastic. Her skin crawled. She threw the doll into the kitchen trash, slamming the lid shut. Relief washed over her. That evening, Emily screamed. Lena bolted upstairs, heart hammering. Her daughter was pointing at the dresser. "She's mad at you," Emily sobbed. And there, sitting upright on the wood, was the doll. Its painted mouth seemed wider, its eyes brighter as it let out a long, piercing laugh. Lena snatched it, shoved it into a bag, and drove miles away. She left it in a dumpster behind a gas station, her hands trembling. Finally, it was gone. The next morning, Emily sat at the table with the doll in her arms. "See, I told you," she said. "She always comes back." Lena nearly fainted. From that night on, the laughter grew bolder. It no longer waited until midnight. It giggled in the afternoon, from the living room when no one was there. It chuckled from the bathroom when the lights were off. It cackled loudly in the hallway, as though chasing her down the stairs. Emily's giggles merged with it, indistinguishable at times, until Lena couldn't tell if her daughter was laughing or the doll. Desperate, Lena tried to destroy it. She locked the doll in the oven and turned the heat high, choking back bile as plastic fumes filled the kitchen. When she opened the door, the tray was empty. She smashed it with a hammer in the garage until shards littered the floor. When she turned back seconds later, it was whole again, sitting on the workbench, mouth stretched impossibly wide. She threw it into the river miles out of town, watching as the current swallowed it. That night, she woke to the sound of wet plastic footsteps padding across her bedroom floor. And laughter. Always laughter. By the final week, Lena barely recognized her daughter. Emily sat for hours in her room, whispering to the doll. Her once bright eyes seemed glassy, her voice dull and monotone. "She says she's mine forever," Emily murmured one night, "and soon she'll be yours too." Lena begged her to stop, begged her to let go of the doll. Emily only laughed. Not her own laugh. The doll's. The last thing neighbors reported was screaming, a woman's voice, hoarse and frantic, echoing through the night. Then silence. When family entered the house weeks later, they found the lights still on, cereal bowls still sitting on the table, milk curdled. Emily's bed was neatly made, and propped against the pillow was the doll, its mouth stretched in a wider laugh than ever before. Paint chipped away, revealing rows of tiny human-like teeth beneath. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. When Sarah moved into her new apartment, she wanted a fresh start. New job, new city, new life. She expected to decorate the place with plants, books, maybe a few paintings. She did not expect the doll. It was her cousin Anna's idea of a housewarming gift. Found her at an estate sale, Anna said, beaming as Sarah unwrapped the tissue paper. What emerged made Sarah's stomach turn. It was nearly life-sized, a mannequin-like porcelain doll in a full satin bridal gown. The dress was yellowed at the seams, the veil delicately frayed, but the lace was intact. Its porcelain face was painted flawlessly pale, with rose-tinted lips and a soft smile. Its glass eyes glinted in the light, too lifelike, too fixed. Anna laughed at Sarah's expression. Creepy, huh? The woman swore it was special, thought you'd get a kick out of it. Sarah forced a chuckle, though her hands trembled. She placed the bride doll in the living room corner, telling herself it was temporary. But the apartment never felt the same again. The first days it was subtle. Whenever Sarah crossed the room, she swore the doll's eyes followed her. When she cooked, she could see the veil in her periphery, like someone standing too close. Her friends joked when they came over. "Looks like she's waiting for the groom," one teased. But when Sarah laughed nervously, she realized none of them noticed what she did, that the doll's posture seemed to shift ever so slightly. Its head tilted differently, its folded hands repositioned, the veil draped at a new angle. It was always subtle, always deniable, until the dreams began. The first dream was hazy. Sarah stood in her living room wearing a white gown. At the other end of the room stood the doll, veil trailing to the floor. She tried to move closer, but the doll's face blurred. The veil lifted, drifting toward her like smoke. And then she woke, breathless, drenched in sweat. The second dream was worse. This time she was at the altar, standing across from the bride doll. Music played faintly, warped and wrong like an organ underwater. When the veil lifted, it wasn't porcelain beneath. It was her own face, pale and frozen in a painted smile. She woke screaming. After that, Sarah covered the doll at night with a sheet. But each morning, the sheet was folded neatly at its feet. Sometimes the veil was missing, only for her to find it elsewhere, draped across the couch, hanging over her chair at the table. Once she found it spread carefully over her own bed. She started locking her bedroom door, double-checking it every night. But the dreams continued, and soon the doll was no longer confined to the corner. She'd leave for work with it in the living room, come home and it would be in the hallway, or standing in the kitchen, or facing her bedroom door. She tried convincing herself she had moved it absent-mindedly, but the doll was far too heavy to shift without effort, and the apartment door was always locked. By the third week, Sarah was unraveling. She barely slept, terrified of waking to find the doll closer. One night, rustling fabric woke her, a dragging sound across the floor. Her heart froze. Slowly, she turned toward the door. The bride doll stood in the doorway, veil brushing the ground. Its porcelain lips were curved wider, too wide, and though its eyes were glass, she swore they blinked. She screamed, grabbing her phone, fumbling for the camera. She snapped a picture and bolted barefoot from the apartment, racing into the night. At her cousin Anna's house, she showed her the photo with shaking hands. Anna's face drained of color. "Sarah," she whispered, "that veil, it's not on the doll, it's on you." Sarah stared, and saw it, her own terrified face beneath the veil. The doll wasn't just wearing the gown, it was trying to put her inside it. The next night, Sarah refused to go home. She stayed with Anna, but even there, the dreams followed. This time, she wasn't standing across from the doll. She was inside it, her hands porcelain, her smile painted, and from behind the veil, she watched herself struggling in her own bed. By now, she was terrified to sleep, but exhaustion always won. One night, Anna woke to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. She found Sarah sitting on the couch, eyes open but unseeing, veil draped over her head. And standing behind her, perfectly still, was the bride doll. When Anna turned on the light, the doll was gone. Sarah was alone, trembling, veil in her lap. Within days, Sarah broke. She abandoned the apartment, left most of her belongings, stayed with friends, slept in hotels. But the bride doll followed. Once, she opened the closet in her hotel room and found the veil hanging neatly inside. Another time, she woke to see the doll standing at the foot of the bed. Weeks later, her friends stopped hearing from her. When Anna went to check, Sarah's apartment was empty. The furniture was gone, the rooms bare, except for the corner of the living room, where the bride doll stood. Veil pristine, satin gown smoothed. And beneath the veil, if you looked too closely, you could almost see her face, Sarah's face, smiling through, waiting. Before we move on to the next story, give us your verdict on this one. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Mark had always loved garage sales. He liked the hunt, the thrill of finding something old, something forgotten, and giving it new life. Tools, records, antique furniture. He'd collected it all. But that Saturday morning felt different. He stumbled on a small, out-of-the-way cul-de-sac where an elderly woman had set up folding tables full of belongings. The air was heavy, as though the whole street held its breath. That's when he saw it. The doll. It was propped in a wooden chair at the edge of the driveway. Its porcelain skin was flawless, too pale, almost luminous in the morning sun. A faded blue dress clung to its frame, fraying at the edges. Its amber glass eyes seemed alive, catching the light in an unsettling way. Mark felt drawn to it, though he couldn't explain why. "How much for the doll?" he asked. The woman stiffened, her lips pressed into a line. "It's not for sale." He hesitated, then shrugged. "Everything has a price." Her eyes flickered with something. Fear, maybe pity. She sighed. "Fine, take it, just don't bring it back." At home, he set the doll on a shelf in his study. For a while, it was just another odd collectible. But that night, as he worked at his desk, he swore he heard something. A faint clink, like porcelain teeth knocking together. He spun in his chair. The doll sat motionless, but its head seemed angled ever so slightly, as if it had turned to watch him. The days passed and the unease grew. The lights flickered when he walked past the study. His cat hissed and scratched at the door whenever it was inside. And every time he came home, the doll's head seemed turned just a little. Toward the door, toward his chair, toward his bed. By the end of the week, he heard it clearly. A laugh. High-pitched. Mocking. At first, he thought it was children outside. But it came at 2 a.m., echoing faintly from the study. When he opened the door, the room was empty. Except for the doll. Sitting upright on his desk now. Amber eyes gleaming. Sleep came harder each night. When he did sleep, he dreamed of it. The doll standing in his bedroom doorway, ribbon at its neck fluttering as though in a breeze that didn't exist. Behind it, rows of other dolls whispered in a language he couldn't understand. He woke shaking, sheets damp, heart pounding. But the doll was never in its place anymore. Sometimes it was by the bed, sometimes on the floor in the hall. Once he found it on the kitchen counter, head tilted toward the stove. By the second week, the disturbances turned violent. Books toppled from shelves, cabinets banged open in the middle of the night. And once, while Mark sat frozen at his desk, the doll's head snapped to face him. A quick, jerking movement, so fast it couldn't be mistaken for anything else. He ran from the room, slamming the door behind him, chest heaving. Desperate, he drove back to the cul-de-sac, doll in hand. But the old woman was gone. Her house stood empty, blinds drawn, driveway bare. Neighbors said she had moved. No one knew where. He was alone with it now. That night, he dreamed again. This time, the doll didn't just stand. It climbed onto the bed, porcelain hands pressing into his chest, amber eyes inches from his face. It whispered something. Not words, but laughter, broken into syllables. He woke with bruises blooming across his chest, shaped like small hands. Mark snapped. He dragged the doll into the backyard, doused it in lighter fluid and set it ablaze. The porcelain cracked, the ribbon shriveled, the dress curled into black ash. He watched until nothing remained but shards and smoke. For the first time in weeks, silence. He slept deeply, dreamless. Morning came, and in the study, on the shelf, sat the doll. Perfect. Whole. Its blue dress immaculate, its amber eyes gleaming. And now, tied neatly around its porcelain throat was a new ribbon, bright red. After that, Mark unraveled. He stopped leaving the house. Neighbors heard him shouting at night, arguing with someone unseen. Laughter followed, high-pitched, echoing through the walls. Days later, the shouting stopped. Silence fell. When the landlord entered weeks later, the house was spotless. Food rotted in the fridge. Mail piled at the door. Mark was gone. But on the shelf in the study, the doll remained. Blue dress pristine, amber eyes glittering, and around its neck 3 ribbons now. Blue, red, and 1 new ribbon, black. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the FearBound family.